This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Parshat Bahaloscha. Now what we're doing today is something a little bit different. Our subject relates to the Parsha. However, it really is a subject in and of itself, and it needs to be fleshed out. It is the subject of, I'd say, choice, bechira, how we make choices. What constitutes what are the factors involved, the forces involved in making choices? This class, I have to be honest with you, the notes here, it's really a two-part series. I'm not going to rush it today. So it might be this week and next week. Alrighty? It's called Understanding Our Choices. And it goes into the classic division of the human being into Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, what they are, how they work together, where the alliances are made between which components of our soul, where they should be made, all of that stuff, okay? We're going to work it out slowly and carefully. The way we're going to relate it to this week's Parsha, stop, I have to do a yard site. Binyamin ben Moshe. Neshama should have an aliyah. And remind me, there's an announcement at the end of the class. Okay, for everybody out there too. Alrighty, so if you look in the Parsha, and if you want to go back and listen to the previous shiurim, there are many already that built on the subject of the Parsha Baloscha really having two halves. Two halves. The first part of this Parsha, it starts at the beginning of the Parsha, and it goes to, page 786, it goes to Perek Yud, Pasuk Lamed Hey, where the two inverted nuns are. And then there are two psukim. And then there's the rest of the Parsha. The first half of the Parsha of Bahaloscha is the last, what we call wrapping up operations, last details before they were going to travel straight from Har Sinai, straight to Eretz Yisrael. It was meant to be an 11-day journey. An 11-day journey straight from Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael. The Moshe came down from the mountain, Yom Kippur, Salachti, and Hashem forgave. They, in the Mishkan, all the building of the whole process of building the Mishkan, now the Mishkan's built. They talk about the Kedusha and the halachas of Kedusha and Tumah and Tara, as we spoke about. And then the last few things, we talked about Nazir Sot, remember last week, all the actual halacha and the deeper meaning of how do we stay loyal to Hashem, because we're going now into a state of living in Eretz Yisrael, which is a little less miraculous than the Midbar, a little less in the womb with a transparent wall, a little less. And so this question comes up, how to stay loyal and focused and not lose ourselves. And then a few more details, and they're about to go to Eretz Yisrael. But suddenly, these two psukim, let's say, stop here, they describe our own traveling, setting a path before Am Yisrael, and ideally coming to rest in its designated place in Eretz Yisrael, and that's it. So you can tell, and we've spoken about this in the past, that between the first of these psukim, Vahi ben Soa, and the second of these psukim, Ubenocho, therein lies, or therein should lie, the story of the Jewish people's travel following the Aron. It traveled and then it rested. But there's no story between these psukim. There's no story. The story that will eventually be written and placed between these psukim is the entire story of Jewish history. We didn't go straight into Eretz Yisrael. Things didn't go that way. And when we finally did get into Eretz Yisrael, it was not under the same circumstances that it would have been originally. In fact, by the time we got in there, those that came out of Mitzrayim, the Yotzei Mitzrayim, were not the same people as those that were Nechnasei Haaretz, going into the land. Things went off track a little bit, and it took a very long time. Although we did enter Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't permanent, it wasn't perfect. And then we lost Eretz Yisrael, and then we came back to Eretz Yisrael, and then we lost Eretz Yisrael, and now we're starting to return to Eretz Yisrael. We should all be zocha to be among the returnees, and soon, Bekarov, and that entire story is destined to still be written and placed between the pasuk of Vahi ben Soa and Benocho. Therefore, Chazal say that really there are 7 chumashim. There's Bereishis, Shemos, Vayikra. Bamidbar until these psukim. That's number 4. This Chumash, which is going to be the story of the history of Jewish people that we hopefully will find our names in. And then the 7th Chumash, which is the rest of the Torah. Now, what these psukim are encapsulated with an upside down nun. We did a lot of speaking about that. We're not going to do it now, but the question is, okay, and just let me say nun, no fail, to fall, to be righted. The question is, how did we not go straight into Yisrael? Okay, that's not just a historical question. What precludes us from progressing from a place of clarity and connection to the promised land, to a place of living in sync with our knowledge, with our convictions, with our inspiration? Why isn't it easy? Why don't we just follow this pattern where we know what's right, we saw what's right, we're devoting ourselves to what's right, we want what's right, and we just start living in sync with that? Why does it not go so smoothly? And here is the example in the Chumash of where it just doesn't progress so smoothly. Now remember, this story, okay, is the story of Am Yisrael in their infancy. They just came out of Mitzrayim. When they stood at Har Sinai, when they saw the miracles on the Yam Suf, it was like the skies opening, so to speak. This great Giloi Shechina, revelation, but it was overwhelming. It wasn't like they were a nation yet that had developed themselves to be in sync with that. It was like seeing something way beyond their imagination or their capacity to integrate. So that is what happens. Hashem gives us as a nation, and even as individuals, sometimes these moments of understanding, of the light goes on, the connection, the inspiration, but it's just, you see something that's still beyond ourselves, and it takes a long time to absorb and integrate all of that. In that process of absorbing and integrating it, it doesn't go so smooth because we are very disconnected within ourselves. We know what's right. We have moments of desire and passion, but our instincts and our natural needs and our urgent, demands, they just get in the way. We're not holistic. It's not a whole shalem alliance between our mind and our heart and our body. It's just all over the place. And we have to bring it together. So here is where you start seeing that although the mind can know something, the seichel can know something, and the neshamah could know something, and the heart could even be inspired, it's not going to go that easily to get your day-to-day life, your body, your material existence in line with that. So the first thing that happens is, Vayhi ha'am kemisonanim. They're about to move to the promised Eretz Yisrael. Boom. Vayhi ha'am kemisonanim. If you look in Rashi, ha'am always means the Rishayim. And when we're talking about tzaddikim, Hashem calls it Ami, my nation. Ha'am is the nation. Now when we say Russia, be very careful here. As explained by many Mefarshim in the first pasuk in Tehillim, which talks about the Russia. A Russia is not the most evil human being that ever lived. It's not the Hitlers. That's really the Oyev or the Sone. A Russia is Milashon. We talked about this a lot. Laharshia, to be inconsistent, to churn, to be chaotic, to go this way and that way, to lurch from here to there. Okay? Whereas a tzaddik is tzedek, consistent. Remember that? We talked about that a lot. Hin tzedek, Evan tzedek. Weights and measures that are consistent. So he says, these are the people that couldn't stay focused on what they knew and what they wanted. Vayhi ha'am k'mesonanim, ra, unsuitable, va'aznei Hashem. And Rashi says, what happens here? Well, you don't even know what happened. So Rashi doesn't tell us what they did wrong. It says, vayishma Hashem, Hashem heard, vayichar apo. Remember, that's always associated with avodah zarah, which means feeling, getting into that zone which is fake, which is, oh my gosh, I'm alone, I have needs, I got to take care of myself, I got to do what I got to do. Remember that I got to appeal to the gods to help me, because here I am all by myself, which is fake news, right? And this is avodah zarah. And this is when you turn to other things to help you. And Hashem is always referred to as Vayichar Af, the nostrils flaring, which is just to give us a symbolism that we, which we're going to talk about this soon, expelling a neshamah which came through the nose, okay? And Vayetivar bam eish Hashem b'tocho b'kseva, and a fire broke out and burned them. Okay, what are we talking about here? Rashi says, we don't even know what happened. They started looking for excuses to disconnect themselves from their overwhelming burden of clarity and knowledge, which doesn't give them then the opportunity to just live by their instincts and their pleasure centers and their sense of gratification at the moment. You can't do that when you have too much clarity. It doesn't let you just live, naturally, but instinctually. And they wanted the fire of passion, of instinct, of the moment to drive them, not the clarity and the truth that then controls everything. And then immediately right after that comes the whole story about the man. They don't want the man, they want meat, they want tava, they want passion. It says, look at the next psukim. Look at the next psukim. Okay. Pasuk Dalad, hasafsuf asher bekirbo hisavu tava. They started wanting to have a want. They started yearning, desiring to have a desire. Okay, what we're saying here is that the body with its desires wants to assert itself, okay? And it wants to be satisfied, and it doesn't want to live this life that is governed by so much clarity and truth and control and discipline, and where the body is not really doesn't have a voice of its own or a demand of its own, or the body is just an obedient servant to the direction, going in the direction of the neshamah. It wants to have a voice, it wants to speak. Okay, what's happening here is really a replaying of the Eitz Hadas story. That happened, that's a description of the psyche of man and why we do the things we do on a global scale. And this is Am Yisrael, coming now to Am Yisrael, going through that same type of thing, wanting to experience the passions of the body. Because we are not yet, as developing human beings, integrated. We don't want to suppress the body's instincts. Okay, that takes much later. Kicks in much later. So here's how it goes. Now we're going into this whole idea of why we make the choices we make. Why did they do this in the midbar? Why do we do this all the time? Okay. In order to understand how we make choices, we have to start with a classic division of the psyche of the human being, or the neshamah of a human being. Those who are familiar with some Chabad philosophy and Rambam, and this is ubiquitous. This is everywhere, okay? We divide the person into Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chabad, teaches about Chaya and Yechida, which we're not going to talk about today, but Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. All right? We have to understand what these are. So I quoted, first of all, something based on the Rambam Shmona Prakim. Again, Shmona Prakim, I've mentioned this many times, it's Rambam's introduction to Pirkei Avos. There's Pirush on Pirkei Avos. And it in and of itself is required reading by every Jew to be minimally informed about what we believe, what our perspective is and our philosophy. Okay? So in Rambam Shmona Prakim, this is an analysis by Rav David Rosenfeld, and he brings Rav Chaim Volozhin. Remember, we always quote him, the Nefesh Chaim. And here, with that, you can read this yourselves, but the main idea here is that the Nefesh is essentially and we'll see the psukim in a minute, the driving life force of a human being. It is your physical life force. It is your physical existence, and more than just your physical existence, the force that drives you and keeps you alive. In other words, it is first of all, this force that keeps you alive, okay, that controls your physical existence, is located in the base of your brain. It is the autonomic nervous system. It keeps you breathing. It keeps your peristalsis going, your respiration going, all your systems going, your circulation going. Everything keeps going. It makes you eat. It makes you sleep. It makes you procreate. It makes you do the things you need to do to survive. It makes you avoid pain at all costs. And it loves pleasure. Okay? And if it gets pleasure, it will seek out that pleasure. Studies have been done about this endlessly. When you stimulate the pleasure centers of a brain, like with rats and sugar, they will endure pain just to experience that pleasure center being triggered. They'll get electric shocks. They'll cross over a little barrier that will give them an electric shock if on the other side their pleasure centers will be stimulated by some dose of sugar. Okay, things like that. So this is your physical life force. We share with the animals, but unlike the animals, it has connections to the other parts of our soul or to our psyche that change the way it operates sometimes. However, here is the difference between the nefesh of a person and the nefesh of an animal is its connections to the other parts of the soul. You'll see that an animal, does not want anything that is not suitable for its survival. It doesn't want junk food, which makes it unhealthy and fat and sick. There is no animal except the nachash, Chazal tell us, that even procreate, even is sexually active while it's pregnant, except the nachash, which is why the nachash is the force in the human being. Remember the Eitz Hadas? We did this years ago. And by the way, Medrash Tanchuma says it's not a talking snake. It's your what we'll call the Yetzer Hara, which again we'll get to. And it wants something that it doesn't need. That's strictly human. To want something that is unhealthy, damaging, dangerous, unnecessary, not needed, that is strictly human. Because the normal life force, the normal nefesh of an animal, the human being just knows what it needs to survive and seeks to provide it for itself. And it makes you listen. You cannot ignore or deny the force of the nefesh. You must sleep. I literally had a pullover on the side of the road. This happens to everybody. I couldn't keep my eyes open, and somebody was on the phone with me, and they're talking, and I don't even hear them. And they're screaming, "Are you there?" You have to sleep, and you have to do the things you got to do. That's the nefesh. Now, it is, as we said, unlike in other animals, it is much more connected to the other parts of the neshamah, other parts of the soul. Let's say the general soul. The second part is called the ruach. The ruach, by the way, in the Eitz Hadas story, there are old shurim on this, but just to trigger your memory, the ruach in the Eitz Hadas story, is who? In the Eitz Hadas story. The ruach is the isha. Very important. The isha is the ruach. Every human being has in them nefesh, ruach, neshama. Every human being has in them nachash, isha, and ish. Make two parallels. Everybody has nachash, your body, your physical force, your driving mind, your brain, which, by the way, scientists today call the reptilian brain, because the cells in this brain are the most primitive and are found in reptiles and now some other primitive animals. Pre-mammalian animals, they have this brain. Mammalians already have more developed cells that do different things. In any case, everybody has it. Now, we all also have a ruach. Everybody has an isha in them, men and women. The isha in the Eitz Hadas represents, don't forget, when we talk about Eitz Hadas and everything that happened in the 6 days, this is pre-time. It's pre-time. We count the world 5, 7, 7, 8 plus Sheshin Mebreshus, or whatever. This doesn't count in real time. This is all about our deep subconscious, our psyche, our spiritual forces. It's in psychology 101, what everything is. It's not a little silly Dr. Seuss. It's not so silly, Dr. Seuss, but it's not, the truffula trees. And this is speaking on a level. Rambam says that the Masa Bereshis, this whole story, is like the Masa Merkava in how esoteric it is. The Rambam, right in the beginning of Nevuchim. Now, the Isha is the Ruach. The Ruach in a person is that part of us that, you could read it here, that is that is drawn, that is the seat, I'd say. It is the seat of passion and desire and emotion and yearning. And when we desire something and we want something, then, that gets connected to our nachash. We make our body get it for us. It also gets connected to the neshama, the higher realms. Now, the seat of emotion, it's been studied that there is a part of the brain referred to as the limbic system. It's actually in the middle of the brain. And when it's stimulated by, it's many different parts of the brain. And when they're stimulated with electrodes and all that, emotions are produced. It is where you get your passion, your tava, you're wanting something. The question is, what do you do with it? What do you want? You could want a lot of different things. You could want what the neshama wants. You could want what the nachash wants. The ruach or the isha is the swing factor. It could go either way. It could be connected to either the neshama or to the nachash, to the nefesh. And as it's called, ruach. it flows, it moves. Okay? So the Ruach is the passion centers, the centers of desire and yearning and love and hate. Now, that is called Isha. The Ish in the story, who knows what's right and wrong, but who has, when Isha decides to eat, helpless, just eats along with her. So the Ish in the story is what's called the neshama. But we have to be careful here. The neshama and the seichel are not exactly the same thing, and we're linking them. Okay, the seichel in a person is the capacity to conceive of truths and ideas and abstract realities, or that don't exist literally, meaning mathematics, advanced mathematics, physics, and all kinds of other philosophical things. And when the mind is recruited to start thinking about those things that the neshama brings to bear, so that the neshama is yearning to, like purpose of life, tachlis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, great ideals like chesed, which we understood as inclusivity and achdus, ideas called nitzchias, eternity, and emes, truth, and spiritual forces that, what we talk when you try to understand malachim and nevuah and connection. This is the neshama, and the seichel can be recruited to allow us to think about these things. But it is not synonymous with the neshama. The neshama, by definition, invested in every person, causes them to care about these things. Just like the emotions cause you to feel, and your nefesh causes you to survive. Now, how do these all work in relationship to each other? This is the question. Before we get there, I want you to, as I said, read A, okay? And then we're going to just look at B, which is Raya Kaplan, another description of what I'm talking about, okay? Just look to the bottom of these three levels of the soul. Neshama is therefore the highest and closest to God. While nefesh, that's the nachash, right, is the aspect of the soul residing in the body, and ruach stands between the two, binding man to his spiritual source, or perhaps to the nefesh and the nachash only. It is for this reason the divine inspiration is called Ruach HaKodesh in Hebrew. Neshama is affected only by thought, ruach by speech, and the nefesh by action. We'll speak about this. We always divide things up into action, speech, and thought, machshava, dibor, and maaseh. Okay. Now, let's just look at sources for what we're saying. Okay, everything has to be sourced. So in Bereshis, there's a pasuk that's beginning to introduce us to this division. So Parak Beis, pasuk Zayin. By Yitzer, okay, let's okay, 4. You see 4, chapter 1 to 3 in Bereshis, ideal and default alliances between the parts of the soul. Let me just bring that in here for a minute. Parak Aleph in Bereshis describes the creation of man. So does Parak Beis. And Parak Gimel talks about the sin of the Eitz Hadas. I learned from my father-in-law, Zechrono Livracha. One of the most important things I ever learned, but everything he taught me was so profound and fundamental. Of Shmuel Ephraim ben Atal Yitzchak is Neshama Shelav and Aliyah. And he showed me, and we did this in the past, and it's a whole shir in and of itself. The analysis between Parak Aleph and Parak Beis. Parak Aleph describes man, but the terminology used to describe man is clearly that of a human being where the neshama and the ruach are one. Ish and Isha are one. What I know to be true and what I desire is one. There is no division. And in Parak Aleph, there's no nachash. There's no snake. There's no nefesh. Because the body naturally is obedient to the desires of the mind and the heart when they are aligned. Okay? It is in Parak Beis where Hashem divides the Ish and the Isha. That's reality. That's our mission in life. Our capacity to know what's true, see what was revealed to us, and our desire to link our passions to that is not automatic anymore. They're divided. It's our job to take our passions and reconnect them to our neshama, Okay? The yearnings of the neshama. This is the parak that describes the division. It is only in this parak, okay, that you begin to see man spoken about as being physical and having a body and a nefesh, okay? That's like has its own eventual identity, and it's in the next parak that the nachash, or the physical material drives, emerge with a voice of their own. That's after Ish and Isha are separated, and now that nachash makes a play for the Isha, which we'll see. But in this parak Beis, here's the pasuk that's showing us the bit of the distinction. Vayitzer, Yitzira, two yuds, Rashi says, of this world and the next world. There's two components here we're talking about. By animals is one yud. They live strictly off the nefesh. Okay? And the nefesh has some higher capacities and more sophisticated animals. It could teach them, use seichel to make some tools. Okay? But the connections are no way near like the connections in a human being. Okay? So Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam. And this Adam, we've already learned, is both male and female. And it's reiterated many times. In fact, in Parakeh it says, Zachar unekeva baram. Zachar and Nekeva created them. Vayikra et shemam Adam. And their name is Adam. Okay, so this is every Ish and Isha are in here. Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es Adam afar min hadam. This is not like Parak Aleph. Parak Aleph calls it Tzelem Elokim. Nothing. This is dirt of the earth, organic material, physical. Okay, temporary. All right. Vayipach ba'apo nishmas chayim, but blown into the nostrils is a neshamah of life. Okay. Now look in the Targum Onkelos on the bottom, which it says on the words nishmas chayim, ruach mimalala, a speaking spirit. So the neshama we're talking about here, okay, in the parak Beis, we're associated with the ruach, the speaking, which Ravari Kaplan just pointed out, many do, not just him, that the ruach, what I want, what I desire, is expressed through my speech, and I state it, and I pursue it, and this ruach mamala, the capacity to express through speech what's in our head, and therefore force the body to follow, that middle, that ruach, that determination, that stating what it's going to be, which is associated with Isha, that comes in here, okay, as separate, really, from the Ish. We're beginning to see the signs of division of the Ish and Isha, all right? Vayhi Adam lenefesh chaya, and now ha'adam, this person was nefesh chaya. We spoke about that too. It means, in the simplest form, like a Rashi, also cattle and beasts are called nefesh chaya, but the nefesh of man is the most highly developed of all of them, because to him was granted understanding and speech. So, the nefesh chaya, we are called nefesh chaya. So, on the one hand, we are just like the animals. When Hashem created animals on the sixth day, they were called nefesh chaya. That's our nefesh. But our nefesh is linked to our ruach, as you see, speech, and our understanding, our seichel. It's linked to all the other aspects of the neshama. What that means is that it is possible to have an alliance between all three parts, between what we know, what we state is our desire, and what we do. It's possible for them all to be aligned because they're all connected. But it is also possible for all of them to operate independently, and that leads to a very messy situation and a lot of confusion and chaos and dissonance, and it's not suitable when they're all going in their own direction and there's no alliance, or there is a distorted alliance between the, as we're going to see, the natural default alliance between the nefesh and the ruach, abandoning the neshama completely to exist on its own, to survive alone. Does this make sense so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. The nefesh is physical, the ruach is the passions, and the neshama, which the seichel can recruit, is abstract spiritual strivings. Now, that was the proof for the ruach being associated with speech, and the ruach being associated with the nefesh, all in the same pasuk. Now, in terms of the neshama, that this is a whole different realm. Okay, when we talk about the neshama, the higher capacity to perceive spiritual truths. There's a pasuk in Eov, and the pasuk says, "V'nishmas shakai tevinem." It is the neshamah of Hashem that gives them bina, understanding. We're not going to go into bina now, but it is a capacity to understand details and specifics and apply them. It is the neshamah that gives a person bina. It is not the ruach, okay, it is not the nefesh. But the ruach has a brain of its own. It knows, it loves and it hates, and it feels, and the body has a brain of its own. And sometimes you see, interestingly enough, a combination of all of them. For example, in music, which is still the one universal language left after Migdal Bavel, where everybody was divided up in different languages. The language of music, my grandfather taught me, was still the one language that everybody can hear and understand. But isn't it interesting that across the world, if somebody is playing its tune and they hit a discordant note, you cringe. Your body doesn't like it. You feel something funny. What is that? And it's abstract. It's music. What is that? Why do we have physical, emotional reaction to an abstract, something in the world of abstraction, of music, of sound? It's a very interesting phenomenon. Okay.
However, there are different scales in different cultures.
True.
And it may be different reactions.
Sometimes cultures choose to play dissonant music on purpose to shake you up. But, and in fact, there is a whole genre of music like that. But it's designed to be out of sync and make you have,
Cultural.
Yes, but in that culture, and even across the board, you can see it. There is an intrinsic feeling when I'm just really relating to there is a feeling that something that is even if it's culture wide is wrong. But what does it mean wrong? Why do we physically feel uncomfortable? Something abstract doesn't make sense to us. That what I'm trying to display is that an abstract construct has a physical reaction. Let's go further here. Let's go now. Let's develop further chapters 1 through 3, okay, and talk about the alliances, okay, the ideal and default alliances between the parts
Just give
of the
us a
soul.
little more clarity between desires, which we're considering now as the ruach, right? That our desire.
We're going to talk about that. No, they're all linked. It depends where desire. Wait 1 second.
That is confusing.
Yes, we're getting there. So, Parak Aleph, man is described as, you should be confused because we haven't fleshed it out yet. Parak Aleph is describing ideal man. They're called Tselem Elokim. There's the word used to create man is Vayivra Bria Yesh Me'ayin. Okay, Isha and Isha are one. There is no etadas and nothing they're not allowed to eat from. They're allowed to eat from everything. There's no limitations. All right, and it is called Tov Ma'od and many other factors in Parak Aleph. This is describing a human being which there is no fear that this human being will be drawn after anything that's not suitable for it. There's no etadas tovara that it shouldn't eat from. Okay, there's no nachash. It's created by Elokim, not even Hashem Elokim, which is Rahmanas, but pure emes. And it is like Hashem, and it's told to dominate everything, and it's tov ma'od. Okay, it is ideal man without any fear that anything will get in the way with its clarity of vision and purpose, and it will not be drawn after that which is unsuitable for it or makes no sense or is ultimately sheker. That's when the mind and the heart are one, and there's great clarity, and the Shechina is, as perceptible by the mind as it is by the heart, which is by the way, by the Ish, and by the Isha, it is the underlying secret message of the other parallel, where the sun and the moon were one size, And then the moon said, hey, why should two kings share a crown? And Hashem said, you should be diminished. This is Chazal's way of telling us this same message. Okay? Neshama and Ruach, Isha, two great lights. In other words, how do you perceive Hashem? Your seichel sees it, your mind sees it, and your heart knows it, and they're equal. But it wasn't designed to last like that. In the story of Isha and Isha, they're divided. In the story of the sun and the moon is diminished. Okay? That's why Isha and moon always go together, and just like the moon will be restored, we will speak about the restoration of the Isha. Now, what happens? Where does this diminishing come from? Where does this dividing up come from? What happens here? So in Parak 2, which is describing our real mission in this world, Hashem divides the Ish and the Isha. In this Parak, it's already Hashem Elokim, because now we're going to need Rachmanis, we're going to make mistakes. They're not told to govern and conquer and dominate the world, but rather to work the world and respect the world and take care of the world. They're compared to the animals, Nefesh Chaya. They're told not to eat from the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra. Suddenly there's something you're not allowed to eat from, which means the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra means, we've spoken about this, it means do not allow yourself to indulge or be subsumed by subjectivity, what you think is suitable and what you think is unsuitable for your well-being. Don't do it. Because the mind and the heart are divided, it is possible for us to want things that are unsuitable because they feel good. And it's also possible for us to train ourselves to not want things that are unsuitable because Hashem explained to us that they're not suitable for us and enlightened us with that. But we could start to kind of decide on our own what we like. So Hashem said, don't do it. Don't allow yourself to be the sole judge of what's suitable and unsuitable now that you're divided. Okay? However, that part of us, the passions in us, is very susceptible to that. It's exactly that. So Parak Beis is talking about real man divided between heart and mind, and the mission of life is to come back together and be basar echad, to be one. Okay. It is in Parak 3 that the nachash emerges. Now that the mind and the heart are divided, suddenly the body says, well, I see that I can take control here, and I can get what I want all the time. Now, how am I going to do that? How am I going to take control and become the melech here? Okay? Well, as you'll see, the nachash will never go straight to the seichel. Okay, the nachash says, I just saw this. I want lemon meringue pie. But my mind knows that, not me, the person was a diabetic, 100 pounds overweight, okay, sick in many ways. How does the body get the arms to feed it poison that will kill it when it knows it shouldn't? How does it manage to do that? How do you get someone to do something that's self-destructive, terrible, a horrible idea? How do you get someone to do something that is directly against their own well-being and interest? How do you do that? How does the body get to eat the lemon meringue pie when the mind knows it shouldn't and it can't? By which mechanism? So the body never speaks to the seichel. The nachash never talks to the ish. The nachash doesn't talk to the ish, ever. No point to it. But you have between the nachash and the ish, you have the isha. This is the swing. This is where everything happens. So the isha has desires. So the nachash, the physical body that had a pleasure center once tasted lemon meringue pie, wants to enjoy it again. Okay? That's all it wants. It doesn't care. It just wants pleasure now. It doesn't have seichel. It doesn't care. Okay? But the mind cares. So it goes to the ruach, the isha, which is passion, and says, it's a very good idea to have lemon meringue pie because it will make me feel good, and it's so delicious, and it's a party, and I deserve it. And what happens is the passion centers are asked to develop a fantasy of why this is good. And in order to do that, the ruach must go, okay, to the imagination, which is another force, the dimyon, And I say, please, explain, give me ideas. Let me imagine why this is really good. Why this is good, just today, it's a party, I deserve it, and nothing's not going to happen. And so the emotional, passionate centers recruit the imagination and the seichel to rationalize that it's good. Okay? The seichel to rationalize it. Oh, and I'll take my pill later, and I'll do more exercise. The seichel to rationalize it. And it recruits the body, and suddenly the nefesh and the ruach have an alliance. The Nachash and the Isha have a very strong alliance, and they have hijacked the imagination and the Seichel to comply. And that's what it means when the Isha decides to eat, that she gives it to the Ish, and the fall of man is described in one word, Vayochal, and he eats. Meaning, once the Nachash and the Isha have an alliance, the mind and the imaginative centers and the energy and the creativity and everything you need to do to accomplish your goal, it's all brought in together, and the mind can't do anything. It doesn't have the power to oppose that alliance. When we're young and dumb, before we've learned our lessons, then the mind starts reasserting itself. The neshama starts reasserting itself, and the way it reasserts itself is a person who lives like this gets to a point where they say, I can't take it. This isn't working. I feel horrible. My life is horrible. Everybody hates me. I have to go to anger management. I'm a narcissist. I'm a hedonist. I got to go to AA. I got to do something. That's what happens. That's when the neshama comes back. And it does come back eventually. And the higher aspirations of man. And then the neshama, which asserts itself, there's got to be a better life for me, recruits the imagination and the seichel and the passions and the body to do the right thing. Okay, wait. Now, just look at 6. Okay, this is my favorite article, life-changing article in Chakira, Flappist Journal of Jewish Thought, 2007, by Menachem Krakowski. I read this article, just to tell you how funny this is, years ago, about 10 years ago, totally game changer in my thinking. And then you have to read the whole article if you want to find it online. It's unbelievable. It's a hard article you have to work through. You could read it 10 times and there's still more in it. I was so overwhelmed by this article, I called him. I went to meet him. Guess what? He's a cousin. Krakowski. Not of my husband's side. Amazing. Anyway, he's the head of psychiatry at Orangeburg Hospital. This is an unbelievable article. It's basically, I'm just giving you a teeny bit of it, identifying the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama with the Nachash, Isha, and Ish, and the different components of the brain, the autonomic nervous system, the limbic system, and the neocortex, which is the seat of abstract thinking and decision-making. So he brings down in his article, he brings down, it's called right here, Reclaiming Self. He brings down the Moreh Nevuchim. He brings down the Rambam, okay? And the Rambam says, notice, it is especially of importance to notice that the serpent did not approach or address Adam. Doesn't go to the man.
This is Rambam?
This is the Rambam. But it says in the bottom, Rambam Moreh 230. But all his attempts were directed against Isha, Chava. And it was through her that the serpent caused injury and death to Adam. You understand? Now that makes sense? The greatest hatred exists between the serpent and Eve. This is the competition. The Ruach and the Nefesh. And between the seed of her seed, his seed and her seed. And her seed being undoubtedly also the seed of man, meaning you don't have a Ruach disconnected from a Seichel. They're all interactive. You want something, you get your mind to explain to you why you can. The offspring of the alliance between the Nefesh and the Ruach, which hijacks the Seichel, is going to be hedonism and self-destruction. But that's how it is. They're going to work together. More remarkable still is the way in which a serpent is joined to Eve, or rather his seed to her seed. The head of one touches the heel of the other. That's the hierarchy. Eve defeats the serpent by crushing his head, and the serpent defeats her by wounding her heel. So what you might want to say here is the nefesh gets to it makes a play for the lowest, earthiest, the heel, needs of a person. And then Isha, the Ruach, when it's where it should be, aligned with the Neshama, can smash the head of the Nefesh, of the Nachash, meaning it can totally obliterate the desires for that which is wrong and unsuitable and not necessary and just momentary gratification, if it is aligned correctly. It all depends on the Isha. It all depends on the Ruach. Okay? Now, you can keep reading this article, which is amazing stuff, okay? And now we're going to go to, I said this might take 2 courses and 2 classes, and I think it will. So we're just going to start Koheles. I'm in the middle of Koheles now in a few places, actually. And we're learning it here by Rena's house, Rena Fuchs's house on Wednesday mornings at 10:30. And 9:30, sorry. And we just got into this, Perek Dalet. Now, Koheles is he's describing exactly the predicament of the person when they find that their nefesh and their ruach are very intertwined, and their neshama is basically helpless. Okay? So what does this mean? This means the following. In Perek Aleph, we described, as we said, ideal man, human being. Perek Beis, we describe reality, division, and the hard work of uniting. Perek Gimel is the description of the sin, what is inevitably going to happen. So, what will happen, it's built into the system, is called the sin of the Eitz Hadas. We will all find ourselves eating from the Eitz Hadas. What that means is, one second, did I give you the pasuk here of the woman? Look at 5, the fall of man, okay? Just keep that open for a minute. So what will happen automatically, okay, is that when we're young, before our neocortex is fully developed, because it only starts developing at 18, and that is the seat of abstract thinking, of forfeiting or declining momentary pleasures of the nefesh for long-term gains of the neshamah, of the person's greater goals. Okay? That only begins to grow in at 18, and nowadays they say it doesn't emerge fully for 10 years. So, a person that is not operating with that alliance between the ruach and the neshama, meaning that what I know to be right and true is what I want, that doesn't start to happen for real till we're close to 20. Probably the reason that we're patur from an adam l'makom till 20. Doesn't mean we do everything for chinuch and all that, but that's not strong. That aligns. And Am Yisrael, right after Har Sinai, when they're still young and they saw this whole revelation, but they still weren't fully integrated, because it's a journey, it's a process which we're going through throughout all of history. So what happens is the nefesh or the nachash is going to say it's good to be subjective. It's going to talk to the Isha and say, what you feel like you want, you're hungry, there's some pleasure to be had, somebody makes you feel pretty or important, either you want to be beautiful and you need money, all these pleasures you want, okay? They're good to want them. And you know what? Feeding them and fulfilling these needs is very suitable for your well-being. So then the Ruach says, that could be true, and develops, as we said, fantasies and rationalizations, recruiting the imagination and the seichel to explain why feeding all these needs, which are unnecessary and often destructive, will really be a healthy, wonderful thing. And it feels good to live like that, just to want something and to find a way to provide it for myself. And society has found a way to create multi-gazillion-dollar businesses out of elevating food and clothing and design and shelter and furnishings and pleasure of all sorts and perfume and travel and food to such an art form, and making us feel it's good to want them and to feed them, and it makes us this and it makes us that, and every car is sold with a beautiful woman. It just goes together, right? If you drive an expensive car, then you're handsome, and everybody wants you. So this is what the nefesh will say. It will only talk to the ruach, okay? So, because the guys designing, or the people designing that advertisement, they know that there's nothing with that car in that lady, okay? Anyway, the thing is that as we said, in Perek Gimel is the sin. This is the fault. We inevitably will believe this. That's the default mode. If we do nothing, we will find ourselves, because it's natural, to be in a very powerful alliance between the nefesh and the ruach. And then what we'll do is we'll give our decision to our man. Okay, v'tochal, she ate. V'tikach mepirya, she took of its fruit. V'tochal, she ate it, she ingested it. That's us. We buy it hook, line, and sinker. V'titein gam leisha iman. She gave it to her man, the seichel, one word, vayochal, and he eats it. Done. That's the whole thing. All of life is a process of disentangling the isha from the nefesh and realigning the isha to the ish. That's the whole journey. Disentangling that alliance and relinking the passions to the neshamah. That's what we're doing. That's what we're busy with all the time. So far, does this make sense? Okay. Now, I think we have to stop here. Take some questions. Next week, we'll continue with Koheles. And bring these back. Bring these back. If you don't have them, print it off your phone or ask the office to print you. And bring them back next week. Any questions?
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.